Good morning to one and all students. Today's class will be on the cerebellum. The cerebellum is a part of the brain which is supposed to be the second largest part, and it is a part of the hindbrain. It is weighing around 150 grams and it is located mainly in the posterior cranial fossa. The main function of this cerebellum is to maintain posture, maintain proper muscle tone and coordination of the voluntary motor activities. Voluntary motor activities means the motor activities which are under your control and which you can perform, right, by your own willingness. So this is a structure which is seen very close to the pons medulla oblongata. So between the pons and the medulla oblongata, you get the there you get a small fossa called in the fourth ventricle, which is actually a small fossa seen behind the cerebellum. And this fourth ventricle becomes a empty cavity filled with CSF. It is mainly containing the choroid plexus of blood vessels, and it is seen at the base of the cerebellum. Okay, so at the base of the cerebellum and in the space between the cerebellum and the pons, right? So what are all the learning objectives of today's class? We will learn about the structure of cerebellum, its external features, morphological subdivisions of cerebellum, connections of the cerebellum, how it is connected with cerebellar nuclei and the functions of cerebellum. Okay, this is a small pre-test, like what do you think is the main function of the cerebellum? Since I've already given you an introduction, you know about it. A, it is thinking. B, posture. Position sense, stability. C, speech area. And D, vision area. So you can try this test. What do you think is the right? You can post me as a comment. Cerebellum. The cerebellum lies in the posterior cranial fossa and it is one of the second largest part of the brain. It mainly is seen behind the pons medulla oblongata, below the tentorium cerebelli. So it is covered by a layer of meninges called as the tentorium cerebelli that covers the posterior cranial fossa like a roof. The word tentorium means it forms a tent over the posterior cranial fossa and covers the hindbrain. So the cerebellum is the largest part of the hindbrain and that is being covered by the tentorium cerebelli. The cerebellum is separated from the brainstem by the fourth ventricle. The cerebellum is connected to the brainstem by three pairs of peduncles. Peduncles means they are connecting fibers. The connecting fibers gives a pathway for the tracts and fibers from the cerebellum to pass through the remaining parts of the brain, as well as it brings in fibers which are brought from the cerebral cortical area to the cerebellum, through which it is going to the peripheral reception centers. So the three peduncles include the superior cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the midbrain, the middle cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the medulla, the pons, and the inferior cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the medulla oblongata. To repeat once again, the superior cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the midbrain, the middle cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the pons, and the inferior cerebellar peduncle, which goes to the medulla oblongata. This is the structure of the cerebellum, where you can see two different halves. The cerebellum is equally present and it has a right half and a left half. In the midline, it is separating, or it is both these hemispheres are getting connected by a small structure called vermis, and every lobe, the right side and the left side, gets itself subdivided into a lateral hemisphere and an intermediate and a medial hemisphere. Here you find a small structure called as the peduncular area, where you get the superior, middle and the inferior peduncle taking its origin from the cerebellum. Well below the peduncular area, you also get a small lobe called as the flocculonodular lobe or flocculus. So these are the different lobes of the cerebellum. So to repeat the lobes of the cerebellum is located in the right, it has a right half and a left half, and both the right and the left halves are coordinated by the means of an intermediate body called vermis. It contains the three structures called as the peduncular structure, superior, middle and the inferior peduncular structures, and well below that you also get another lobe called as the flocculonodular lobe, right? Okay. Then the presence of the nodulus. Now this vermis is getting converted. This vermis can be divided into a superior half and an inferior half. The superior half usually confines itself to the superior border of the cerebellum. It continues itself as a superior border of the cerebellum, while the inferior half is well defined and we call it as a nodulus. Okay, right. Now this area of the nodulus will form the roof of the fourth ventricle. roof of the fourth ventricle. The ventricle that is present in between the space of the cerebellum and the brainstem is only called as the fourth ventricle. So this nodulus becomes the roof of the fourth ventricle. This nodulus becomes the roof of the fourth ventricle. What are all the external features? It has an outer grey matter, and that we call it as the cerebellar cortex, and the inner white matter. Like when we studied the cerebrum, we did study the structure, isn't it? In the structure, it had an outer grey matter and inner white matter. Just like that, the cerebellum also has an outer cerebellar cortex, which is grey, and the inner white matter. So the outer cerebellar cortex, it has transverse fold. If you look at the cerebellum in the previous diagram, you are able to see very well appreciated fissure-like structures that divide the cerebellum into smaller, lobes. These are nothing but otherwise called as the folia. Folia is fissures that divide the cerebellum horizontally. Thereby, the purpose of the folia is to increase the surface area and to accommodate more number of neurons. The two hemispheres of the cerebellum, the right and the left, are connected by a median worm-like structure, what we call it as a vermis. The vermis can be divided into two, a superior part and an inferior part. The superior part will cover and blend along with the upper border of the cerebellum, while the lower part will form the flocculonodular lobe. What is the lobes of cerebellum? The cerebellum can be subdivided into three lobes by the presence of two different fissures. One is the posterolateral fissure that separates the flocculonodular lobe from the remaining main parts of the cerebellum. So basically, flocculonodular lobe is one lobe. The second largest lobe is called as the corpus cerebelli. The corpus cerebelli is the largest lobe of cerebellum, and it is being subdivided into further parts. So this is the image of the cerebrum, okay, cerebral cortex. Below that, what you get is the mesencephalon area, and then you get the pons and the medulla oblongata. This space between the cerebellum and the pons is occupied by the fourth ventricle, and this is the cerebellum, which is bilaterally present, and it has an in-between midline with the worms being connected. This image actually makes it clear, it's been portrayed in such a way that the entire structure is exposed to you. So coming to the corpus cerebelli. So when we were talking about the hemispheres, we said there are two major hemispheres in every lobe. Both the right and the left halves of the cerebellum is getting divided into two major lobes. One is the corpus cerebelli, another is the flocculonodular lobe. The corpus cerebelli further divides itself into an anterior half and a posterior half. This is the reason why we said cerebellum has three lobes separated by two fissures. And the anterior and the posterior lobes of the cerebral fissure divides it in and makes the cerebellum getting divided into three different lobes. A horizontal fissure is a fissure that demarcates the superior surface of cerebellum from its inferior surface. So the horizontal fissure will demarcate the superior surface of cerebellum from its inferior surface. Morphologically, how would we divide cerebellum? Morphologically means the macroscopical view. The vermis, which connects the two halves of the cerebellar hemispheres, is divided into parts extending from the superior to the inferior surface. So I said that there is a right half and the left half of cerebellum. Cerebellum has two different hemispheres, right hemisphere, left hemisphere. Both of them are functioning independently, as well as they are also functioning in a coordinated way. So for proper coordination, you need a connecting tissue. This vermis becomes the connecting tissue for the coordination of the cerebellar activities, as it is for the cerebrum. Hope you remember that the cerebrum also had two cerebral hemispheres, the right half and the left half, and the coordination was occurring through a tissue called corpus callosum. It is a kind of a commissural fiber. Just like that, the cerebellum also has a connecting stalk, and that is called as the vermis. The vermis mainly helps in coordination of the cerebellar activities of the right half and the left half. Morphological subdivisions of cerebellum include: first, what are some of the important features that we learned with cerebellum? It is one of the part of the brain that develops in the very earlier stages. That when the zygote is in a very preliminary stage of development itself, it develops. And the initial part of the cerebellum that develops is called as the paleocerebellum. That paleocerebellum gets itself, better developed, or in today's terminologies, we can call it updation. It updated, or it grew with better functions to form neocerebellum. So when you download an app in a mobile, so that always gets updated, right? Without your notice, it automatically gets itself updated with the recent changes. Like that, the cerebellum also was formed first on its evolution, and that initially formed cerebellum is called paleocerebellum, which later got itself updated into neocerebellum in human beings, because this differs from species to species. So in lower animals, there are no much of skilled activities, and there are very less motor coordination, no skillful motor coordination in lower animals. But for human beings, the motor coordination is very important for skillful activities like writing, carving, sculpturing. These are some minute activities performed by human beings. So that developed in the new cerebellum. So it is next. It is formed by floccular nodular lobe, which is and lingula. Floccular nodular lobe is a tongue-like projection which is seen at the base of the peduncular area, and it has got some specific functions which we will learn. It receives fibers from the vestibular nuclei concerned with maintenance of equilibrium and muscle tone and posture of the trunk. So the main functions of cerebellum includes maintenance of posture. Posture means, what do I mean by that? It gives you postural sense. When you are able to sit in a chair, you sit erect and at a comfortable position. But when you ask a patient with cerebellar lesion to sit, he will not be able to sit in a straight, correct way. Instead, he will be swaying to the right and left, which he will not be able to know whether which is right. So that nature of swaying movement is because of the instability in his posture. Second sense, maintenance of muscle tone. Muscle tone, we can call the term, the maintenance of muscle tone, we can put it under two broad headings. Like, it maintains equilibrium between the within the movements, and it also is responsible for the proper tonic movement mainly. Tonic means the ability of the muscle to what to say, the resistance of the muscle to any force that is applied. Okay, it is the ability of the muscle to uh, to give resistance to the normal force that is applied on palpation. Okay, so when there is a defect in this resistance, we call it hypotonia. So hypotonia is one of the important clinical features of cerebellar dysfunction. Then dysenergia is another function. Dysenergia means loss of coordinated muscular activities. So the muscular activities will not be coordinated, and he will not be able to do proper activity. You draw a straight line, okay, and ask the patient to walk on the straight line, he will not be able to walk. The exact example that I can give you is the way an alcoholic walks. You make an alcoholic walk, he will not be able to walk in a straight line. What actually the alcohol does is, it goes and disturbs the cerebellar sense, equilibrium and postural sense. So this is the reason why he is not able to sit straight, he is not able to walk straight. He always sways in his movements. When you give a cycle to an alcoholic, you would have seen him how he does it, right? He will even fall down because he loses his stability. So the alcohol mainly acts over the cerebellum, and it loses the coordinated movement of the muscles, and the equilibrium of the person is lost. That is the main action of the alcohol. That is the exact example that I can give you for cerebellar lesions. Coming to the paleocerebellum, which is the very primitive stage of cerebellum, which first initially developed and which is usually seen in the lower animals. Of course, we do have it, but this has got updated in us as the new cerebellum. Okay, so it consists of an anterior lobe, which is called as the lingula, the pyramid, and the uvula. It receives input from the spinal cord. The spinocerebellar tracts do pass through the paleocerebellum, and functionally it is concerned with muscle tone and posture of limbs. So paleocerebellum is present in the human beings, and the main function of this part of the cerebellum is to maintain muscle tone and postures of the limbs. Okay, so when you walk, you do sway your hands up and down when you walk. You don't walk like a robot, isn't it, without moving your limbs. So who tells you to move your limbs? Who tells the limbs to, first put the right, then across the left, then right, then left. Who decides or who coordinates that rhythmic movements of the limbs? So that is under the control of the cerebellum, mainly the paleocerebellum. Coming to the neocerebellum, it includes, now this is an advanced version of the cerebellum, and it includes the remaining part of the cerebellum, that is the posterior middle lobe mainly, except the pyramidal and the uvulary part. So it receives input from the cerebellar cortex. So now the cortex under the direct control of cortex, cerebral cortex. That's why we call it neocerebellum. And it is through the corticopontine fibers, pontocerebellar fibers, and the inferior olivary nucleus. The main function of it is to convey the visual and auditory pathways. The neocerebellum is the main part of the cerebellum in human beings that is highly developed, and it is responsible for all the skilled movements. Those skilled movements are also very beautifully coordinated with the visual and the auditory pathways. The inputs are processed in the cerebellum and integrated into motor system by the means of motor cortex, red nucleus and vestibular nuclei. So these tracks which are coming from the cerebral cortex, it is coming through the corticopontine and the pontocerebellar fibers to the cerebellum. From there, it is going to convey the information to the spinal cord. So the inputs are being processed in the cerebellum and it is integrated. Integrated means complete coordination of the visual, auditory, skillful movements. Okay. Somebody calls you and asks you to draw a diagram. Now this is a sequence. Okay. Somebody calls you. So immediate first thing what you do is you hear a voice calling you by your name. So the auditory pathway recognizes the voice. The moment you hear the voice, the next coordinated movement is you turn your neck to see who's calling you. Am I correct? So the eyes turn, and along with the auditory pathway, the visual pathway is coordinated and you are seeing who calls you. Then you will see somebody, maybe your faculty, telling you draw a diagram. So you are seeing the faculty. The moment you see, that information is conveyed to the cortex. The cerebral cortex tells you it is your faculty. And now the cerebral cortex directs the cerebellum to obey to the orders given by the faculty. Now the visual pathway and the auditory pathway both together work in a coordinated way. And then once the order is given, the next function what he or she has asked you to do is to draw a diagram. Now the pencil is put in the hand, and it is a skillful movement for the hand to move and draw the beautiful diagram. So again, it is a coordinated activity of the muscles of the upper limb. So here you find there is coordination of auditory pathway, visual pathway, muscular coordination of the upper limb, and the command given from the cerebral cortex being very well coordinated in an integrated way. This is the main function of the cerebrum. So it is integrating all those functions into a single function so that you are able to skillfully do whatever command you have received. Okay, and this integration is possible mainly by the control of motor cortex. First thing, second, red nucleus. What we call it as the rubrospinal pathway. Okay, rubrospinal is one important tract that passes through the red nucleus to the spinal cord. Then the vestibular nuclei that has the fibers that crosses through the vestibular nucleus in the brainstem. So these are the three major pathways through which the inputs are coordinated. Coming to the connections: corticospinal, rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, reticulospinal. These are the four important motor tracts that pass through the cerebellum. Motor. When I use the word motor can be replaced by another synonym called as efferent. Efferent pathways means motor pathways, or otherwise I can also call it descending pathway. So why do I call it descending? Because the activity is guided by the cerebral cortex. It is directed downwards to, and whatever coordination or the order given by the cerebral cortex, mainly the motor cortex, comes lower down to the midbrain area. Through the midbrain, it is transmitted through the thalamus area, and through the internal capsular area, it is transmitted through the to the brainstem, and through the brainstem, it is going through the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, it is transferred to the receptor sites. So this is how motor tracts pass. We call it descending because the direction of the tract is from downward direction from cerebral motor cortex up till the peripheral receptors which are present in the limbs. The opposite to this is the sensory tracts, otherwise we can call it afferent, AFFERENT. So afferent means sensory, otherwise we can call it sensory tracts. All these three terminologies are same. Okay, I can either call the motor tracts as efferent tracts, or I can also call it descending tracts. I can call the sensory tracts as afferent tracts, or I can also call it ascending tracts. Is it clear? Right. So these are all descending tracts: corticospinal, rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, reticulospinal. All of them are involved in expressing the cerebellar activities on the motor mechanism. So this is an image that shows you the motor and the premotor cortexes that is giving command over, and this is passing through the ventrolateral nucleus of thalamus, and from there it is going through the corticospinal tract through the medulla oblongata. It is reaching the spinal cord and it is going in for the motor coordinated activity. While going through the pyramidal region of medulla oblongata, it does pass through the cerebellum as well. And here you find another red line that is passing, and there is a relay of the fibers. It goes to the cerebellum here, and you also find a tract that is coming out from the reg nucleus, what we call the rubrospinal tract. Okay, so that is going to the spinal cord from the red nucleus. Coming to the nucleus, what are all the nuclei? What you can see within cerebellum? The cerebellum, as it is, macroscopically, it has two layers, an outer gray matter and inner white matter. Okay, but within the inner white matter of cerebellum, at certain places, there are some condensations of gray matter, what we call it as the nucleus. What is nucleus? The nucleus is nothing but condensations of gray matter present within the white matter. That is the part which you have to know. Cerebellar nucleuses are nothing but condensations of gray matter seen along the white matter in the cerebellum. Okay, outer part is fully gray matter, there is no doubt. Within the gray matter there is white matter. Within the white matter, at certain places you get some localized condensations of gray matter, what we call it as a cerebellar nuclei. They are the dentate nucleus, emboliform nucleus, globus nucleus and the Festigi nucleus. To repeat the names once again: dentate nucleus, emboliform nucleus, globus nucleus and the Festigi nucleus. All the four of them are very important for MCQs. Fill in the blanks, 2 mark questions they can ask you. Name the cerebellar nuclei. 4 nucleus were expected to write for 2 marks, half mark each. Okay, or it can be asked in practicals as well. So it is very important 2 mark and favorite for many examiners as well. Coming to the microscopic feature, the microscopic feature of cerebellum has an outer molecular layer, which the outer molecular layer, which is nothing but bodies of the neurons. It is mainly made up of stellate and basket cells. Okay, so it consists of the axons of granule cells and dendrites of the Purkinje cells. So this Purkinje cells become very important cell for identification of that outer molecular layer. Presence of the dendrites of Purkinje cells and stellate shaped cells. Stellate means star shaped cells are present in the outer layer. So the outer molecular layer has the cell bodies of stellate cells, basket cells and axons of granular cells, dendrites of Purkinje cells and sensory climbing fibers. Intermediate Purkinje layer. The next layer below that is made up of fully cell bodies of these Purkinje cells arranged in a single layer. The third or the inner layer is consisting of cell bodies of granule cells, Golgi cells and their process and the sensory mossy fibers. The cerebellum is a coordinator. Okay, it is supposed to be the principal ganglion for the coordination of motor activities, but it do convey some sensory activities also. Because when I say position sense means it is it is a sensory feeling for you to locate or to recognize your position. The other important sensory function what cerebellum does is proprioception. Proprioception and extroception. Proprioception, extroception, positional sense. All of them are the 3 major sensory activities of the cerebellum. Next, coming to the connections of the cerebellum. climbing fibers. Climbing fibers are derived from the inferior olivary nucleus of the medulla oblongata, and the mossy fibers derived from the spinal cord vestibular nucleus. Both these fibers make synaptic contact with each other, the neurons of the cerebellar cortex, and they help in connecting the tracks. So the fibers through which the tracks from the cerebellum is going is through the mossy fibers, and the fibers that connect the spinal cord with the vestibular nucleus in the brainstem is through these fibers called as the mossy fibers. These fibers make synaptic contact with neurons of cerebellar cortex, and the final output pathway is connected with thalamus, brainstem, and spinal cord. So what is the purpose of all these mossy fibers and everything? They are connecting the cerebellum with the spinal cord and the brainstem area, that is the pons and the medulla, as well as even above the brainstem, that is the thalamus, the midbrain area. So the purpose of these tracks is to connect the cerebellum to the midbrain, to the pons, to the medulla oblongata, and also downwards towards the spinal cord. So all these areas are getting connected with the cerebellum, and coordination of activities are happening. Now, I told you the cerebellum is getting connected with the midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord. How are they getting connected now? I said it is getting connected through the tracks. How these tracks pass through? The tracks are passing through three different peduncles. Peduncles are nothing but conjunction fibers. The fibers that helps in connecting cerebellum with the midbrain, cerebellum with the brainstem, cerebellum with the medulla oblongata. So mainly if you see, the superior cerebellar peduncle is concerned with connecting the cerebellum to the midbrain. The middle cerebellar peduncle is helpful in connecting the cerebellum with the pons. And the inferior cerebellar peduncle is responsible for connecting the cerebellum with the medulla oblongata. Now, through these peduncles only, the tracks are passing. Through these peduncles only, the tracks are passing. We will learn every peduncle in detail and the names of the tracks that are passing through it. First, let's talk about superior cerebellar peduncle. The superior cerebellar peduncle has tracks. It has both motor tracks and sensory tracks passing through it. The motor tracks are otherwise called as the efferent tracks, and the sensory tracks are otherwise called as the afferent tracks. Okay, in brackets I have given afferent means to the cerebellum. Efferent means from cerebellum to some other location. That is the direction, to and fro direction. So to name the tracks, first let me talk about sensory tracks or afferent tracks. The anterior spinocerebellar tract, tectocerebellar tract, and the trigeminocerebellar tract. Efferent tracks, otherwise the motor cerebellum, which is the cerebello-rubral fibers, and the dentato-thalamic fibers are the motor fibers that pass through the superior cerebellar peduncle exclusively. Coming to the connections, this is an image that shows you the purple structure. What you see is a thalamus. Thalamus means a part of the midbrain. So thalamus here, and this is the space of the third ventricle, the pineal gland, okay, which is seen at the third ventricular area, and the green structure what you see here is called as a colliculus. There is two colliculus, one is superior colliculus, another is the inferior colliculus. The one which is seen on the top is superior colliculus, and this is the inferior colliculus. Well below the inferior colliculus, what you find is a trochlear nerve. The moment you see the trochlear nerve itself, you should be able to identify that this is a dorsal view. Dorsal view means posterior view, because the trochlear nerve is the only nerve, that only cranial nerve that comes out through the dorsal aspect of the brain, isn't it? Remaining all the cranial nerves are coming out only through the ventral aspect. So that is also an important MCQ. So coming here, this is the cerebellar peduncle, which I can divide it as the superior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, and inferior cerebellar peduncle. This is the peduncular structure that connects it to the respective hemispheres of cerebellum. The right half of the cerebellum and the left half of the cerebellum. And this part is becoming the roof of the fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle is a space between the pons and the cerebellum. And here at the roof, you also find some plexus called as the choroidal plexus, which are nothing but blood vessels which are seen at the floor of the choroid at the floor of the fourth ventricle. Right. Now this is the posterior median sulcus, and this is fasciculus cuneatus and gracilis, which are nothing but the sensory the fibers that comes from the spinal cord to the brain stem. Okay. And on the either sides, what you can find will be the facial, the vestibulocochlear, the glossopharyngeal, and the vagus cranial nerves coming out from the ventral aspect of the brainstem. They are all coming from the ventral aspect of the brainstem. That's why it's given like as if it is coming from the back side. Okay, because this view is a dorsal view, posterior view. Now, coming to the anterior spinothalamic tract, what is the function? It transmits proprioception and exteroception for information from the lower limb. So, the entire proprioceptive functions from the lower limb is transferred to the cerebellum by the means of the anterior spinothalamic tract. Then, superior cerebellar peduncle and the fibers of the tract cross the midline. The superior cerebellar peduncle and its fibers also do cross over each other across the midline, whereby the right half of the body comes under the control of the left cerebellar hemisphere, and the left half of the body is under the control of the right cerebellar hemisphere. So there is also crossing over seen in this tract, in the superior cerebellar peduncle. Coming to the tectocerebellar tract, fibers arise from both superior and inferior colliculus. Fibers from superior and inferior colliculus to the of the midbrain goes to the cerebellum. So going back to the image, which is colliculus, this rounded structure is called as the colliculus. This is superior colliculus and this is inferior colliculus. From the superior colliculus to the inferior colliculus, the fibers pass through the cerebellar peduncle, superior cerebellar peduncle to reach the cerebellum. Okay. So the superior and the inferior colliculus become part of the midbrain. Right. So the fibers from the superior and the inferior colliculus of midbrain come to the cerebellum through these fibers, and the fibers mainly convey information of the visual and auditory pathway. Take a note, very important, visual and auditory pathways are conveyed through the tectocerebellar tract from the fibers that comes from the superior and the inferior colliculus of the midbrain to the cerebellum. Next is the trigeminocerebellar tract, that is the fibers that arise from the chief sensory and spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve and project to the cerebellum. Efferent fibers arising from the cerebellum end in the red nucleus or the rubrospinal or the red nucleus area and then to the thalamus. Cerebellar fibers also directly reach the thalamus through the cerebellar peduncle, and the tracts influence the upper motor neurons of the cerebral cortex called as the thalamocortical fibers and the lower motor neurons called as the rubrospinal fibers. So the trigeminocerebellar tract you can divide it into two, that is the upper motor neuron fibers and the lower motor neuron fibers. The upper motor neuron fibers we can call it thalamocortical because it is going to come from the cortex to the thalamus. Up till thalamus it is upper motor neuron. The lower motor neuron is the remaining fibers up till the spinal cord. No? From the red nucleus up till the spinal cord we call it lower motor neuron fibers. This is again an image that shows the rubrospinal tract. This is the rubrospinal tract, and this is the dentate nucleus, the superior cerebellar peduncle with its connections. This is the corticopontine fibers from the cortex to the pons, and this is the cortico-rubrothalamic fibers from the cerebral cortex through the thalamus. It is coming through the cerebellum. Okay, and the relay is in the thalamic area as well as it is passing through the red nucleus and then it is passing through the cerebellum. Right. You also have the corticopontine fibers from the cortex to the pons directly. These are the fibers of the middle cerebellar peduncle, pontocerebellar tract, and the black ones that I've marked here is the olivary nucleus. Okay, and this area is called as the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Coming to the middle cerebellar peduncle, what are all the fibers that are going to pass through this? The pontocerebellar fibers, because you know that the middle cerebellar peduncle is the tissue that is going to join the pons with the cerebellum. Superior cerebellar peduncle join the middle cerebellum with the midbrain. Now the middle cerebellar peduncle is going to join the cerebellum with the pons. Hence, it is going to carry the pontocerebellar fibers connecting the pontine nucleuses to the cerebellum. The fibers of pontine nuclei cross to the opposite side and enter the cerebellum through the cerebellar peduncle. The middle cerebellar peduncle is also considered to be the largest peduncle when compared to the superior and the inferior cerebellar peduncles. What are all the fibers that pass through it? Afferent. What are all the afferent fibers? Vestibulocerebellar fibers, olivocerebellar, reticulocerebellar, posterior spinocerebellar tract, cuneo-cerebellar, rostral spinocerebellar, anterior external arcuate fibers, and para-olivocerebellar are all the sensory fibers. When it's coming to the motor, cerebellovestibular, cerebello-olivary, and cerebelloreticular. Coming to the vestibulocerebellar, the fibers arise from the medial and the inferior vestibular nuclei, pass through the inferior peduncle, and project to the flocculonodular lobe, regulating the movements of the eyeball and vestibulo-ocular reflex. Vestibulo-ocular reflex means a reflex that makes the visual activity coordinate with the auditory activity. When you hear something, your eye is coordinating with the auditory pathway, and your eyes are seeing something to coordinate what you hear also. You see and hear, and both these reflexes are coordinated through the vestibulo-ocular reflex. And the next is the olivocerebellar tract, the inferior olivary nucleus across the middle line and project into the contralateral cerebellum as climbing fibers. The fibers that mainly it is a fiber that comes from the inferior olivary nucleus. It crosses the midline and it crosses each other and project to the contralateral cerebellum as climbing fibers. Reticular cerebellar fibers are fibers from reticular nucleus to the cerebellum, mainly from the lateral reticular and paramedian nucleus of medulla. So here the fibers from the medulla is getting fibers from the fibers of medulla and the pons to convey getting conveyed to the cerebellum. Posterior spinocerebellar tract is mainly for proprioception and extra proprioception sense of the lower limb. Posterior spinocerebellar tract. And the cuneo-cerebellar tract is otherwise called posterior arcuate fibers. Posterior arcuate fibers only we call it as the cuneo-cerebellar tract, and it is an accessory cuneate nucleus of medulla that conveys proprioceptive fibers from the upper limb. So proprioceptive fibers from the lower limb and proprioceptive fibers from the upper limb are conveyed to the cerebellum by the spinocerebellar tract. That we can divide it as the posterior spinocerebellar and the cuneo-cerebellar tract. Coming to the rostrospinocerebellar tract, it arises from the posterior gray column of the spinal cord. The cervical and the upper thoracic segment of spinal cord are mainly concerned with these tracts, and it transmits the sensation from the upper limb and the upper part of the trunk, and correspondingly the functionally the anterior spinocerebellar tract is also coordinated with it, and it is mainly responsible for all the sensations of the upper limb and the upper sensations which are received by the upper limb sector of the spinal segment, and the upper and the thoracic segments of spinal cord are getting transmitted to the cerebellum by the means of the rostrospinocerebellar tract. Anterior arcuate fibers, it arises from the arcuate nuclei of both the fibers. Main function is homeostasis of physiological role, and it is involved in feeding, metabolism, fertility, and cardiovascular regulation. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis means bringing up a normal or in a stability, or in all the physiological functions. Like when you eat, you're able to, at a particular point it reaches a satiety feeling where you are not able to overeat. So there the homeostasis of feeding is present. So the feeling of satiety in feeding. Even in metabolism, the amount of food what is getting metabolized, the amount of absorption and excretion is also controlled by the homeostasis of these fibers. Fertility. Fertility is the release of the ovum and the sperm in male and female, and the ovarian cycle, the based on which the ovum is released is all, so that a proper homeostasis is maintained. Okay, in the release of eggs, you know that the ovum is released from the right ovary at one particular cycle of menstruation, and the left ovary from the other side. So there is a cyclic or rhythmic control for these ovarian cycles, so that only during its turn that the ovary releases the ovum. Not that both the ovaries do it simultaneously and two ovum is released. That's not possible. So there is a rhythmic control, and that homeostasis and control is maintained by the cerebellum. Of course, the homeostasis of the cardiovascular function. It is not only responsible for the heart but also for the breathing control. So the breathing and the cardiovascular control in its homeostasis is maintained by the external arcuate fibers. Coming to the anterior external arcuate fibers, it arises from the arcuate nuclei on both the sides and it forms a part of the corticopontocerebellar nuclei, para-olivocerebellar tract. Mainly, it has the medial and the dorsal accessory olivary nucleus, that is the ascending and the descending auditory pathways. The cerebello-vestibular nucleus and its fibers are derived from the flocculonodular lobe of cerebellum and the fastigial nucleus of cerebellum, and they project into four vestibular nucleuses. The cerebello-reticular fibers, they take origin from the fastigial nucleus of cerebellum and it is distributed to the pons and medullary reticular formation. So, the cerebello-vestibular and cerebello-reticular fibers are mainly fibers that arise from the flocculonodular lobe, and the four deep nucleuses what we learned, right? One among the nucleuses is the fastigial. Like that you had the globuses, like that the four deep cerebellar nucleuses. So fibers from these four cerebellar nucleuses are evenly distributed to the pons and medulla through the cerebello-reticular fibers. Coming to the blood supply. The blood supply is mainly by the posterior inferior cerebellar artery, which is a branch of the vertebral artery, anterior inferior cerebellar artery, which is a branch of the basilar artery, superior cerebellar artery, which is again a branch of the basilar artery. So the major blood supply is from the basilar artery and the vertebral artery. What are the main functions? So I think I've told number of times about the functions. Let me repeat it once again. Maintenance of equilibrium, muscle tone, posture. Coordination of skillful movements. Cerebellum controls the movements of the same side of the body, and cerebellum receives proprioception sensations from the limbs and trunks, muscles and joints. Okay, proprioception. You take a knee hammer, you try to hit the knee. What happens? The vibration sends it from the joints and the muscles is taken to the brain by the means of cerebellum. The motor activity is expressed through the vestibulospinal, rubrospinal and the reticulospinal tracts. Coming to the applied anatomy, the medulloblastoma in younger age group is very common, and patients with the problem with medulloblastoma is a tumor that arises and in the medulla oblongata, and because of which the motor coordination is lost. That leads to a kind of swaying activities of the patient. Another important applied aspect is the cerebellar ataxia. What is cerebellar ataxia? Cerebellar ataxia is nothing but a condition which happens because of the loss of the coordinated activity of the limbs, the instability in the movements. This cerebellar ataxia happens and the gait of the patient itself changes. Gait means walking style. He will not be able to walk in a very coordinated way, and he will not be able to um, in a coordinately, the walking will be in a swaying way, as I said initially, like the walking of an alcoholic. So other than that, you will also have the truncal ataxia, staggering gait. Truncal ataxia is a patient with an unsteady walking style, that only we call it truncal ataxia, and there is also staggering in his walking style. Then another feature what we can see is nystagmus. Nystagmus is incoordination of the eyeball. So involuntary movement of the eyeball in the eyes, so that there is a there is an oscillatory movement of the eyeballs. Oscillatory movement means the eyeball tends to move from the medial side of the eye to the lateral side of the eye like an arc on both the sides bilaterally without control. So that is nystagmus. Okay, and you can also see something called Romberg's sign. What is Romberg's sign? The patient is unable to maintain the balance while standing upright and falls on closing the eyes. Suppose if I ask the patient to close his eyes, he will not be able to stabilize himself. Immediately he will fall down. That is called as what? Romberg's sign. The involvement of paliocerebellum will lead to the diminished muscle tone, what we call it as the hypotonia and the dysenergia, which I already spoke to you earlier. And the disturbances in the tendon reflexes, like the tapping of the patellar tendon. Just now I told you, take a knee hammer, tap the patella of the knee. You will get the reflex, or the oscillating movement of the leg is transmitted to the cerebellum, and that we call it as the patellar knee jerk, or we call it as the patellar knee jerk, wherein that vibration is conveyed to the cerebellum and it is able to move the limbs. Okay, move the joints. So inability to maintain balance while walking. That is a common term, what we call as ataxia. And there is something called dysmetria. What is dysmetria? Inability to measure the distance correctly reaching an intent target. And it is they don't even know the distance they are walking, and they will not be able to reach the target properly. Okay, this is because of a condition called dysmetria. Next thing is, you ask the patient to touch the tip of the nose, okay, tip of his own nose with his hands. He will undershoot or overshoot the tip of the nose. When the patient tries to correct the mistake, it results in an to and fro movements. So this is again a feature of the cerebellar lesion, wherein he will not be able to touch his own nose tip properly. Either he will touch it above the tip or below the tip of the nostrils. Okay. Then the other associated features include dysarthria. Dysarthria means inability to talk, inability to properly phonate certain syllables. Okay, so inability to properly pronounce certain syllables is called as dysarthria. And we can also say scanning speech, that can also be called as scanning speech. And there is also called something called rebound phenomena. What is rebound phenomena? The patient is unable to check the actions of the opposing muscles, and the patient is asked to push the palm of a doctor by his own palm. Okay, so the doctor's hand is kept and he is asked to push the doctor's hand. That is not possible with him, because he loses the control of the coordinated muscle activity, and the muscle loses its resistance. The muscle will lose its resistance, and the tone of the muscle is lost whenever there is a cerebellar lesion. These are the ways you test a patient with cerebellar lesions. So this is a consolidation of the cerebellar topic. So I hope you understood all the features what I had spoken to you. You can give the feedback as a comment to this lecture. Thank you all for listening. And the assignment following this topic will be posted to you through the Google Forms, which you can attend. Thank you. Thank you so much.